Grant Mercer had memorized every loop and curve of the ink on the parchment. 3 months of correspondence, every detail planned, every emotion carefully written in elegant script that promised a life he had only dared to dream of during the long, solitary nights on the Wyoming range. It was Christmas Eve, and the world had been painted in a thick coat of silence. Heavy snowflakes drifted from a slate-gray sky, blanketing the valley in white. Grant stood on the porch of his ranch house, ignoring the biting chill that nipped at his exposed skin. He wore his best attire for the occasion, a crisp light blue shirt that matched his eyes and a black vest that hugged his broad frame. He watched the trail leading up to the property, his heart hammering against his ribs like a trapped bird. The stagecoach was late, delayed by the deepening drifts, but finally, the dark shape emerged from the curtain of falling snow. The driver, bundled in furs, pulled the team to a halt in front of the modest homestead. Grant stepped off the porch, his boots crunching loudly in the fresh powder. When the carriage door swung open, Grant's breath hitched in his throat, freezing in the air before him. 2 women stepped down into the snow, identical in every way that mattered. They were visions of ethereal beauty, entirely out of place in the rugged American West. They were Chinese, their skin like porcelain against the winter backdrop. They wore matching traditional Gyeongsams of embroidered silk that shimmered despite the gloom, and around their necks, they both wore vibrant red scarves that danced in the wind. One moved with the fluidity of water, her hands folded demurely inside her sleeves, her dark eyes scanning the ranch with a mixture of wonder and trepidation. The other stepped down with the weight of a warrior, her chin tilted upward, her eyes sharp and assessing, daring the cold, or anyone else, to challenge her. They both carried identical lacquered traveling cases. They both wore the same jade pendant around their necks. And when they looked at him, they both possessed the same hauntingly beautiful face he had constructed in his mind from the descriptions in the letters. Mr. Mercer, the gentler one, spoke first, her voice soft as falling snow. "I am My Lin. I am your bride." "No," the other interrupted, stepping forward to shield her sister from the wind, her voice carrying a steel edge. "I am My Xing. And I believe there has been a grave mistake." Grant's hand instinctively went to the pocket of his black vest, where the letters rested against his heart. 3 months of courtship. He looked between the 2 women, identical faces, identical heritage, yet carrying souls that felt worlds apart. The driver, eager to escape the storm, tipped his hat and cracked his whip, the stagecoach rolling away and leaving the 3 of them alone in the silence of the winter dusk. "Ladies," Grant managed, his voice rough. "You'll freeze out here. Please, come inside. We can sort this out by the fire." The silence in the main room was heavier than the snow outside. The fire crackled in the hearth, casting long, dancing shadows against the timber walls. Grant poured tea, his hands trembling slightly. "One of you wrote me about the philosophy of the river," Grant said, looking at them. "About how water yields but eventually conquers stone." "I did," they both said in unison. Grant frowned. "And the story about the Lantern Festival in San Francisco? The recipe for mooncakes?" "That was me," came the chorus again. My Lin, the gentle one, bit her lip, looking down at her teacup. My Xing, the fierce one, held Grant's gaze without flinching. "This is impossible," Grant muttered, running a hand through his hair. "How can you both know these things? How can you both claim to be the woman I've been writing to?" "Because we are twins, Mr. Mercer," My Xing said, her tone defensive. "And it seems someone has played a cruel game with our lives." "Someone?" Grant asked. "Our Aunt Sue," My Lin whispered, her voice trembling. "She raised us after our parents passed. She arranged this correspondence." My Xing's eyes flashed with anger. "She didn't just arrange it. She forged it. We found the letters she was sending in our names. She was using details from both our lives, My Lin's poetry and grace, my practical skills and ambition, to create the perfect woman for you." "But why?" Grant asked, feeling the ground shift beneath him. "Because," a smooth, unfamiliar voice answered from the doorway, "a perfect bride fetches a higher price in a negotiation." The door had swung open without a sound. Standing there, shaking snow from a heavy fur coat, was a man Grant recognized instantly. Victor Halloway. He was a land baron who had been buying up the valley, usually by force or fraud. Flanking him were two hired guns, their hands resting casually on their holsters. "Halloway," Grant growled, standing up. "You're trespassing. It's Christmas Eve. Get out." Now, Mercer," Halloway drawled, stepping into the warmth. "I'm just here to welcome the new arrivals. And to collect what is owed." "Owed?" Meishing stood up, placing herself between Halloway and Mai Lin. "Your Aunt Sue was a woman of expensive tastes," Halloway explained, his eye sweeping over the twins with a predatory gleam. "Gambling debts in the Chinatown parlors of San Francisco. She couldn't pay. So, she offered me collateral." "Us?" Mai Lin gasped. "Not just you, my dear. This marriage contract," Halloway produced a paper. "It transfers all pre-existing family debts to the husband upon the union. And since Mr. Mercer here has been so stubborn about selling his land, I figured this was the easiest way to acquire the deed. Once he marries one of you, doesn't matter which, the debt is his. And the debt is substantial enough to foreclose on this ranch immediately." "I haven't married anyone yet," Grant said, his voice dropping to a dangerous octave. "True," Halloway smiled, a cold expression that didn't reach his eyes. "But these ladies are here illegally now. Immigration laws are strict for your kind," he sneered at the twins. "Without a husband, they are vagrants. I can have the sheriff deport them back to a war-torn province by morning. Unless, of course, you sign the ranch over to me now. Then, I might be persuaded to let the ladies stay as domestic help." Grant felt a surge of rage so hot it almost melted the snow outside. He looked at Mai Lin's terrified face and Meishing's burning defiance. He had fallen in love with a ghost made of ink and paper, but now, faced with the flesh and blood reality of these two women, he felt a protective instinct fiercer than anything he had ever known. "You orchestrated this," Grant said. "You used them." "I seized an opportunity," Halloway corrected. "There is something you do not know," Meishing said, her voice cutting through the tension. She reached into her lacquered case. The gunman tensed, but she only pulled out a scroll wrapped in red silk. "Our father was not a gambler like our aunt," Meishing said, unrolling the document on the table. "He was a surveyor for the railroad. Before he died, he discovered a vein of gold in the hills bordering this valley. He filed the claim under a pseudonym to protect it from people like you." Halloway stepped forward, squinting at the map. "A gold claim? That's a fairy tale." "It is real," Mai Lin added, finding her courage. "We did not come here just to escape our aunt. We came to find the man our aunt was deceiving, and to secure our father's legacy. This claim. It is worth 10 times the debt you hold." Halloway's face darkened. The greed in the room was palpable. "If that claim is real," he whispered, "then I certainly can't let any of you leave this house alive." He signaled his men. "Burn it down. Make it look like a tragic Christmas accident." "No!" Grant shouted, lunging for the rifle above the mantel. One of Halloway's men fired. The bullet splintered the wood next to Grant's head, forcing him to dive behind the heavy oak table, pulling the twins down with him. "Cover the back!" Halloway barked. "I'll handle them." "Stay down," Grant ordered the women. He crawled toward the kitchen, where he kept a scattergun. "I am coming with you," Meishing whispered. She grabbed a heavy iron poker from the fireplace. "I am not a damsel to be saved, Mr. Mercer." Mai Lin, surprisingly, did not cower. She grabbed a lantern and a bottle of high-proof spirits. "Then I shall not be one either." Outside, the smell of smoke began to drift in. Halloway's men had lit the barn. The horses screamed in panic. "They're burning the livestock," Grant grit his teeth. "I have to get to the corral." "Go," Meishing said. "We will hold the house." Grant looked at them, 2 women in silk dresses on a freezing night, preparing to fight for a home they had just arrived at. He realized then that the woman in the letters wasn't a fabrication, she was the combined spirit of these two incredible souls. Grant slipped out the back door into the swirling snow. The barn was ablaze, casting an orange glow over the white yard. He saw one of the gunmen pouring kerosene on the porch. Grant raised his scattergun and fired. The man dropped, clutching his leg. But Holloway was waiting. He stepped from the shadows of the stables, his revolver raised. Valiant effort, Mercer. But foolish. Holloway cocked the hammer. Say goodbye. Suddenly, a high-pitched, piercing whistle cut through the wind. It wasn't a bird. It was My Lynn. She stood in the open doorway of the house, silhouetted by the firelight, holding the lantern high. Over here, she screamed. Distracted, Holloway turned. That split second was all Meishing needed. She launched herself from the porch railing, the red scarf trailing behind her like a banner of war. She didn't have a gun, but she had the element of surprise and the iron poker. She swung it with all her might, striking Holloway's arm. The gun flew into the snow. Holloway roared in pain and backhanded Meishing, sending her sprawling into the drift. He scrambled for his weapon. Grant didn't hesitate. He rushed forward, tackling Holloway into the mud and slush. They rolled, fists flying. Holloway was strong, but Grant was fighting for more than land now. He was fighting for the two women who had saved his life. A gunshot rang out. Grant froze. Holloway went limp beneath him. Grant looked up. Sheriff Dalton sat atop his horse at the edge of the property, smoke curling from his rifle. Beside him were two deputies. "Merry Christmas, Grant," the sheriff called out, his voice grim. "Got a telegram from San Francisco about a missing pair of sisters and a fraudulent debt collector. Seems Mr. Holloway has been on the run for a while." Grant scrambled off Holloway and ran to Meishing. She was sitting up in the snow, clutching her side where she had landed, but she was smiling. My Lynn ran barefoot into the snow to embrace her sister. Grant knelt beside them, oblivious to the cold, his light blue shirt stained with soot and snow. "Are you all right?" "We are alive," Meishing said, looking at him with intense green eyes. "And we are free." The aftermath was a blur of statements given to the sheriff and the fire being doused. Holloway and his surviving men were carted off in irons. By the time the sun began to crest over the mountains on Christmas morning, the world was calm again. Grant stood in the living room with the twins. The danger had passed, but the dilemma remained. "The debt is void," Grant said. The sheriff confirmed it. "And with your father's gold claim, you are both wealthy women. You can go anywhere. San Francisco, New York. Back home." My Lynn looked at Meishing. A silent conversation passed between them, a language of twins that needed no words. "We have nowhere to go," My Lynn said softly. "Aunt Sue is gone. Our home is gone." And, Meishing added, stepping closer to Grant, "We realized something during the fight. The letters. We wrote them to survive, yes. But the feelings in them? The desire for a home, for safety, for a man of honor? Those were not lies. I fell in love with the writer of those letters," Grant admitted, looking from one to the other. "But she doesn't exist. She is half of you, and half of you." "Then do not choose," Meishing said boldly. Grant blinked. "Excuse me. In our culture, in the old ways, a man of great standing could care for more than one wife," My Lynn said, her cheeks flushing pink. "But here, we know the laws are different." "However," Meishing interrupted, "we are alone in this valley. We are three people who have saved each other's lives. We do not care for what society thinks. We care about what is right for us." Grant looked at the two of them, the gentle poet and the fierce warrior. He couldn't imagine life without My Lynn's softness, nor could he imagine a day without Meishing's fire. Together, they made the perfect whole he had read about in those letters. "I can't offer you a conventional life," Grant said, taking a hand of each woman. "But I can offer you my name, my protection, and my heart. All of it." That is all we ever wanted, my Lynn smiled. That Christmas morning, there was no priest, no church bells. Just a lone rancher in a black vest and 2 women in blue silk, standing before the fireplace. They spoke vows they wrote themselves, binding their 3 lives together in a bond forged by snow, fire, and ink. They lived quietly at first, the subject of whispers in town. But as the years passed, the Mercer Ranch flourished. The gold mine proved real, funding a new school and hospital for the county. Grant was never seen without his 2 wives, and those who saw them together, the way they moved in sync, the way they looked at him, and the way he cherished them both, stopped whispering and started respecting the strength of a family that had written its own rules. The story of Grant, my Lynn, and Meishing serves as a powerful reminder that the definition of family is not always written in stone, but in the heart. It teaches us that true love is not about possession, but about recognition, seeing the truth in another person and accepting it wholly. The twins showed immense resilience, refusing to be victims of their aunt's schemes or Holloway's greed, proving that strength comes in many forms, the courage to fight with an iron poker, and the courage to remain gentle in a harsh world. Furthermore, Grant's willingness to look past societal norms and race during a time of great prejudice highlights the importance of judging people by their character rather than their origins. Their union wasn't just a marriage, it was a pact of survival and forgiveness, showing that even when we are deceived, we can find truth in the aftermath if we are brave enough to embrace the unexpected. What did you think of Grant's decision to marry both sisters? Do you think he did the right thing by defying the conventions of the time to keep them together? Let us know your thoughts in the comments below. If you enjoyed this story of winter romance and Western justice, please hit that subscribe button and turn on notifications so you never miss a tale. Thank you for watching.